Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we are going to find out who would win in a fight between the JSA character, the Flash, whose real name is Jay Garrick. We're pitting him against Electro, the Spider-Man villain. Now, if you guys have listened to the show for a while, this is the third Flash duel that we're doing. Our first Flash episode included Barry Allen, the Flash, against Quicksilver. Our second one was Wally West, the Flash, against Speedball. And this is our third one against Electro. We're kind of pitting these Flash characters against a different type of speed-related character just to mix things up. In this case, we have a Flash going up against a character who can project energies that travel at nearly the speed that the Flash can run.
Right, and this is leading up to our 200th episode, which is coming in November, where we're going to pit the JSA against the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and this is our last related duel to that, so we're coming up on episode 200 real quickly here, guys. This is actually episode number 195. Before we get into the duel and run the simulations on these characters, we're going to go over the comic book movie news from the past week. So we'll be talking about how Black Widow, Eternals, and Shang-Chi have all got pushed back due to the coronavirus. As often as we think that this will be our last time talking about how a film has gotten delayed, they always keep popping back up, which sucks, but is probably necessary. We'll also be talking about how the Watchmen television show has won 11 Emmys this past year. So it really did well. Really happy for it because it was a great show. We'll also be talking about how Aldis Hodge has been cast as Hawkman in the upcoming Black Adam film. We'll be talking about how James Gunn will be creating a Peacemaker television show, which has been ordered for HBO Max. And finally, we'll be talking about the Helstrom trailer that was released this past week for the show that will be on Hulu in October.
There's a lot of news.
Oh yeah, a lot to get to.
As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic.
Just a heads up to our Patreon subscribers, look forward to a new blooper episode coming within a couple of days at the 1st of October. If you guys are patrons of ours, then you know that we introduced a new feature for you guys where you now have access to our Discord server. So we've had quite a few fans chatting with us on that server now. It's been a lot of fun. Great having you guys on there. If you're not patrons, you're missing out on the party. So be sure to go to patreon.com/dynamicduel and join us on the chats that we've been having on Discord. And just a quick reminder, guys, to please subscribe to our show if you haven't already. And if you have, please help us grow our podcast audience by giving us a rating or review on whatever platform you're listening to us on, or by sharing us with your fellow DC and Marvel fans. And actually, you don't even have to do that. If you could just share it with your fellow Marvel fans, that would be great. Because who cares about the DC ones, right?
I care. I care about them.
And with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize. A No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that I personally draw for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was in regards to the upcoming Ant-Man 3 film, where it was rumored that the script is either going to introduce the Young Avengers team or the Fantastic Four team, which was helped supported by the announcement that King the Conqueror will be the primary villain for that film. So we asked, which team do you hope gets introduced in Ant-Man 3, Young Avengers or Fantastic Four, and why? We didn't get a lot of answers. I blame myself because I forgot to post the question to our Facebook. But just a heads up to everyone, you don't have to wait for us to post the question to social media. Like if you listen to the episode and you have an answer, just shoot us a message. We'll get it.
Right. But we did get enough answers to have a series of honorable mentions and a winner. So let's go ahead and go down those. Our first honorable mention goes to Shane Habazin, who said that he thinks Ant-Man 3 should set up both teams. Very diplomatic answer. He wants both teams introduced because then we would get a new Avengers team and a setup for Galactus through the Fantastic Four.
And I think this film could do that. I mean, I don't think you need to do too much more than introduce Stature in this film. And I don't think that'll be hard to do because there are so many other properties out there that are setting up other Young Avengers characters.
That's true, and you can have them all come together in a separate property, whether it's like a Disney Plus television show or a Young Avengers film. That being said, introducing both teams in one film may feel like a little bit of overkill, but that's just in concept. In theory, we thought that Captain America Civil War was going to have too many characters, but that ended up working just perfectly.
Yeah, it introduced us to Black Panther, it introduced us to Spider-Man. It did a lot of things in a short amount of time. And it didn't need to fully flesh out each thing it introduced because luckily the MCU is episodic in a way. There's always another film to fully flesh out other characters.
That's true.
Our second honorable mention goes to John Starosky, who said that he feels like the Young Avengers would be a better fit for a team introduction in Ant-Man 3. The Fantastic Four has been done so wrong, not only once but twice now, so in his opinion, they deserve their own film to make up for the Fox bombs. And that's not to say that the Young Avengers aren't solo film worthy, because depending on how they structure the story, they could be, but the Fantastic Four certainly deserves a real chance at redemption.
So yeah, basically he's saying that the Fantastic Four shouldn't be shoehorned into the Ant-Man 3 movie and that they should be redeemed in their full-fledged film.
Saving the Young Avengers for Ant-Man.
Yeah, probably as a way to gauge their popularity. It's unknown whether or not the general public is clamoring for a Young Avengers film. But everybody, I think, is eagerly anticipating the Fantastic Four to be done right. So yeah, if John could only choose one between the two, he thinks it should be Young Avengers.
Whereas our next honorable mention winner, Harrison Fox, said that he would like to see the Fantastic Four be introduced, because they're long overdue for a well-done theatrical adaptation. And with access to MCU elements, they could definitely be part of a much bigger and enjoyable experience. Plus, he mentioned that the MCU is long overdue for Doctor Doom, who could potentially be the next big baddie of the entire MCU, spanning several movies to wreak havoc.
Yeah, the Doctor Doom angle was what really caught my eye for this particular answer. No one else really mentioned Doctor Doom, but he's right. Doctor Doom could be the next Thanos or Loki in terms of being a character that can span the course of several films and not just be a one-and-done villain.
So great answers. We want to give a quick shout out to everyone who reached out to us, including Isaiah Bethune, Jeremy Orr, Spiderbat6, and Jeff Miles Jr. We appreciate you guys sending us your answers.
Yeah, thanks for interacting with us. But the winner of this week's No Prize goes to Calvin Mims, who said that he would want the Fantastic Four to be introduced in Ant-Man 3, and he even set up a way that he imagines that could be done, stating that he thinks Kang the Conqueror will appear through a time portal at some point in the Ant-Man movie, and in the after-credits scene, the portal powers back up, and the Fantastic Four burst through looking for Kang. Kang has destroyed their timeline, and they followed him to this timeline. And that's a way for Marvel to not have to rehash their origin story again, and we get an experienced dysfunctional superhero family in the MCU. Which I think is a brilliant idea. Much like how we already got an established Spider-Man in the MCU without an origin, this is an interesting way to do the same thing for the Fantastic Four, since we've already seen that franchise rebooted several times.
Yeah, if Marvel wanted to show their origin, they could always do like a brief flashback in a future solo film with the team.
Absolutely, yeah. I think this is a really good idea, and I hope Marvel's listening. But congrats again to Calvin Mims. You're the winner of this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a chance at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, let's just get the bad news out of the way right away. Black Widow has been delayed. In my mind, I was hoping to see this movie as soon as possible, whether it was in theaters or on the small screen. I just wanted to see it, so I'm really bummed about this news, but it's understandable considering the recent uptick in coronavirus cases again, which we all knew was a possibility that was likely to happen with the upcoming colder months. So Black Widow is no longer going to come out on November 6th, and it has been pushed back a year from its initial release date, starting the summer timeframe for 2021 on May 7th next year.
Yeah, that's a considerable distance. They're really playing it safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they could have moved this film to the previous Eternals date on February 12th, 2021, but they decided to skip that date altogether and put the next Marvel movie in May. It's interesting the way they moved things around here because initially the order of upcoming Marvel films was going to go Black Widow, then the Eternals, then Shang-Chi, but now it's going to be Black Widow, then Shang-Chi, then the Eternals. The new Shang-Chi date is July 9th, 2021, and Eternals has been moved to November 5th, 2021, which is also about a year after it was initially supposed to come out.
And there's still plenty of time for them to make edits to the film if there are any continuity errors as a result of the reorder of the films. So I don't think that's anything to be worried about. I am legit surprised that we're not going to see any MCU film in 2020 now.
Yeah, this is by far the longest gap in between MCU films that we've ever had since the inception of the MCU. But luckily, we are getting a total of 4 MCU films next year with Black Widow, Shang-Chi, the Eternals, and Spider-Man. In addition, we're also getting Morbius and Venom And we're getting quite a few Disney Plus shows next year, so it's going to be jam-packed. 2021 is going to be our year, guys. Screw 2020. Like,
Yeah,
seriously, just get it over with already. Especially since it's likely that Wonder Woman is also going to get pushed back again.
Ugh, I hope not. Since Black Widow didn't take that Valentine's Day slot for 2021, I think it almost makes sense to put Wonder Woman there. So that was the bad Marvel news. In the good DC news, Watchmen won 11 Emmys, which is insane. It won more Emmys this past week than any other show during this year's Emmys. This was also the first time that a comic book property has ever won one of the top prizes at the Emmys. There's the best drama, there's the best comedy, and there's best limited series, which Watchmen won. And I think it absolutely deserved it.
Yeah, if you guys listen to our Watchmen Season 1 review, you'll know that we think it's one of the greatest comic book television shows of all time. It was really true to the spirit of the original graphic novel, a sequel deserving of that original masterpiece.
Right, and not only did it win for Best Limited Series, it also won for editing, outstanding costumes, outstanding music. Trent Reznor was the one who did the music for Watchmen. It also won for Best Supporting Actor. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II won that award. And Regina King won for Best Lead Actress as Angela Abar/Sister Knight. It also won for casting, cinematography, sound editing, and sound mixing. And I mean, it was nominated for a bunch of other awards, but I mean, 11 is enough. I don't want to be greedy here. What's really interesting is that Damon Lindelof's other big hit series, Lost, also won 11 Emmys through its entire run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he matched that with Watchmen in one season. If you haven't seen Watchmen yet, I don't know what I can say to get you guys to watch it. 11 Emmys. That's unheard of. What other comic book show has ever won that? How many Emmys has Marvel won?
A lot, I'm sure.
I think they only have one for Jessica Jones.
But Marvel has gotten a lot of nominations. Like, The Punisher got a stunt nomination, Legion got a cinematography nomination, and Daredevil's gotten, like, editing, visual effects, and title card nominations as well.
Or is this one of those, like, oh, well, it's an honor just to be nominated kind of things?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Okay, yeah.
Don't discount that. How dare you?
There's a difference between being nominated and getting, like, 11 Emmys in one go.
I mean, it was a great show. It was a truly great show.
It was. Congrats to everyone who was involved with it. Very well deserved. In other DC news, Aldis Hodge has been cast as Hawkman in the upcoming Black Adam film starring Dwayne Johnson. I don't really have my heart set on any casting announcement for this. So when I learned that it was Aldis Hodge, I was just kind of like, yeah, that's pretty awesome. I was actually a big fan of the show Leverage about almost 10 years ago, and he was one of the main characters. He's a really good actor. I think he'll do a fantastic job in the role.
And he has a fantastic build. Like, Hawkman is just really buff, and so is Aldis Hodge. I think he'll fill out those wings pretty damn nicely. And I'm glad they went with a black actor, considering that the character has his roots within ancient Egypt. And even though the character can get reincarnated as any race, if they are going to portray the character alongside Black Adam and Dr. Fate in ancient Kondak times, this is a great bit of casting.
Yeah, that region is definitely a melting pot for all different kinds of skin tones. So yeah, it is kind of race bending, but I don't mind it at all. Now, we know that they're not going to have Hawkgirl in the film because Dwayne Johnson said as much during the DC Fandom event, but we are going to get Atom Smasher, who's already been cast as Noah Centineo, and we also know that Dr. Fate and Cyclone will round out the Justice Society. We're not sure who's going to be in those roles yet. I think it kind of depends on which version of Dr. Fate they go with. And Cyclone is such a new and obscure character that you could pretty much go any direction you want with her. But this brings us to our question of the week. Who would you cast as Dr. Fate and Cyclone, two JSA characters announced for the upcoming Black Adam film? Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. Moving back to the DC television side of things, James Gunn will be producing a Peacemaker television show for HBO Max, which will be a spin-off series from his Suicide Squad film, and it will be starring John Cena. I guess with COVID going on, James Gunn really hasn't been able to move forward with Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's kind of tied up in the MCU's release schedule. So Warner Brothers reached out to him and asked him if he could do any television show on any of the Suicide Squad characters, which one would it be? And he responded with Peacemaker. So it's going to be an 8-episode series in its first season. James Gunn is going to write all of the episodes, and he may even direct a few.
And that's a huge vote of confidence for the character of Peacemaker in next summer's The Suicide Squad film and John Cena's portrayal. We've been hearing behind the scenes that John Cena was just going to nail it out of the park with his performance, and it's looking like that's going to be the case if they're basing an entire show around him. The main issue that I have with this show, though, is that it may give away that the Peacemaker actually survives the events of the Suicide Squad film.
Well, not necessarily. According to the wrap, the show is going to be an origin story for Peacemaker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it might be something of a prequel.
Okay, but the show is not going to come out before the movie comes out, right?
I mean, it could come out concurrently. The movie is going to be released on August 6th, 2021. And with the Peacemaker, who really doesn't have any flashy powers, I could see them, filming an entire series in the spring and early summer for a fall release. I think we'll really have to do a Duel episode featuring the Peacemaker around the time of the movie and show's release.
Yeah, we could put him against somebody like U.S. Agent, who's going to be in the upcoming Falcon and the Winter Soldier show.
That would be perfect. That's going to be awesome. In the behind-the-scenes trailer that they had for the Suicide Squad during the DC fandom, John Cena said that the Peacemaker is kind of like Captain America if he were a douchebag.
And that's who U.S. Agent is.
There you go. We didn't learn too much more about the show, other than it'll feature a few more characters from the Suicide Squad film. We're not sure which ones yet.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that show on this show as we learn more about it. In our last bit of news, we got another trailer for the upcoming Helstrom television show, which will be premiering exclusively on Hulu this upcoming October. Now, it was made before the transition of power within Marvel Television Studios from Jeff Loeb to Kevin Feige, but I do have to say that Jeff Loeb did do some pretty decent work, including the Marvel Netflix shows, including shows like Legion, and this television show looks to be in the same vein of quality, turning out to be quite a compelling little supernatural thriller. As you guys may or may not know, the premise of the show is regarding the Helstrom family. Now, Damon Helstrom, the main character, is secretly the son of Satan, who impregnated his mom, who gave birth to Damon and Anna, also known as Satana, so the two kids grew up unaware of who their father was. But they were destined one day to help him take over the earth. But Damon's like nuts to that, and he ends up fighting his father using his powers of hellfire, although eventually in the comics one day he did end up taking over as one of the rulers of hell. In this series, it looks like Damon and Anna are part of a paranormal investigation group, with they themselves having some supernatural powers. It looks like Damon does have some form of pyrokinesis, and it looks like Anna has some decay aura or something. There's a part in the trailer where some flowers near her start to wilt at the news about her mother. I'm not sure what paranormal investigation group they're part of. In the comics, they did run an agency called Helstrom and Helstrom, although my guess is that in this show, they're part of a group called the Shadow Hunters from the comics, although I could be entirely wrong about that. That's just my conjecture.
It does seem like they're estranged and they're reuniting after a while to take on their mother.
Yeah, during the course of the show, something happens with their mom. It looks like she's possessed by some kind of demon, and she was institutionalized due to her realization of who their father was. The show kind of looks like the Supernatural series, although these characters have cooler powers. I was especially excited to see in this trailer that Damon does have the pentagram scar on his chest. It looks way more cool than it ever did in the comics. In the comics, it was just, line art. But here, it actually looks like a burn scar.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about the designs of the show, of the logo.
Yeah, and I like the actors that they chose too. Although I don't know if I'm familiar with any of their work. They just look like they fit.
I did notice that this trailer had zero Marvel attachment to it, just like the previous one.
No, I think they're definitely trying to separate the new Marvel television projects that are going to be on Disney Plus that are related to the MCU and this other stuff that's not connected to the MCU, of which it looks like Helstrom and the upcoming MODOK show are the last remnants. But I'm looking forward to the show. It looks creepy as hell. Looks like it's going to be perfectly released around the time of Halloween. And I'm into spooky stuff, and I like Marvel, so hopefully this turns out well.
I just hope that the show wraps up nicely, because I don't think we're getting a second season.
No, yeah, I hope it doesn't end on a cliffhanger or something.
Yeah, don't pull a Swamp Thing with this one.
Well, I'm still hoping that Swamp Thing will be revived on HBO Max alongside the other Justice League Dark characters.
Ugh, that would be great. That'd be fantastic.
But it looks like that does it for all the news for this particular episode, so let's go ahead and get into the main event of this episode, where we find out who would win in a duel between the JSA character, the Flash, and the Spider-Man villain, Electro. Alright, the Flash versus Electro. Now, what do these characters have in common? Well, they both have lightning motifs. They both have the funkiest headgear in all of comics. Of course, Jay Garrick wears like this big bowl on his head with wings that is meant to evoke the Greek god Mercury. And Electro wears a wacky-ass mask with like lightning bolts all over it. It's really weird looking. Both characters can move pretty fast, sure. The Flash is definitely faster, but Electro commands electrical energies that can move nearly as fast as the Flash.
Yeah, when it comes to speedsters in comics, I think DC definitely has a broader cast of characters to choose from. Like, we could have gone with someone like the Wizard, but it turns out his top speed is only like 100 miles per hour, which isn't fast at all.
Yeah, it's not as fast as Quicksilver, and we've already done a Flash vs. Quicksilver match. But above all else, we don't like to repeat ourselves. Like, if you want to know who would win in a fight between, like, say, the Young Avengers character of Speed versus the Flash, then just look at our Quicksilver episode. You'll learn what it's like for a guy not as fast as the Flash to go up against the Flash.
Exactly. So we knew we wanted to do something a little bit different for this episode. I think traditionally fans would like to see Black Lightning go up against Electro, but we've already used Black Lightning in a duel against Storm. And the characters' powers are so similar, it's hard to think of any other outcome than a coin toss for that match.
Yeah, it's like who would win in a lightning bolt versus a lightning bolt? Well, the answer would be a lightning bolt.
So we're mixing it up. We'll see how it goes.
If you've never listened to one of our duel episodes before, the way we determine a winner between these two characters is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using their statistics. Now, what's a Monte Carlo simulation? Well, it's a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling.
In our case, it randomizes statistics along a normal distribution, which is the bell curve, as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters we use are based on the official Marvel power grid, and we use that criteria to extrapolate the DC character stats. We've included some additional stat categories of our own, such as range, damage potential, and perception, in order to create a more complete and robust simulation.
Running these 1,000 simulations gives us a percentage of wins for each character, and we declare the one with the higher percentage to be the ultimate victor, given that they're more likely to win any given battle. No character ever wins 100% of the time. Comics have shown that there's always a way for Batman to defeat Superman, for example, though according to our numbers, he'd only win 7.9% of the time. We feel our method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the comic book stories.
And we use this method because it was the least subjective, most unbiased way to determine who would win. Of course, we're both heavily biased toward our respective allegiances, and instead of debating these matches forever, we just let the math decide for us. So there's no fan votes here, and no relying on just character feats.
Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1,000 simulations would actually play out beat for beat. And I think that it is your turn, Jonathan, to go first with your character's history, so let's go ahead and learn all about Jay Garrick the Flash.
Alright, so there have been several bearers of the Flash mantle. Barry Allen, who you can learn more about in our Flash vs. Quicksilver duel, and Wally West, who you could also learn about in our Flash vs. Speedball episode, are the two most popular characters known as the Flash. But the original speedster and the inspiration for all the others was a man named Jason Garrick. Now, prior to World War II, Jason, aka Jay, attended Midwestern University in Keystone City, where he double majored in physics and chemistry, inspired to be a scientist after reading pulp fiction science fiction magazines as a kid. During his junior year, Jay conducted an experiment to purify tritium oxide, also known as super heavy water, in a cyclotron particle accelerator to remove all traces of radioactivity. Jay accidentally inhaled fumes of heavy water when one of the vials broke in the purification process, and he fell into unconsciousness. After a week, Jay awoke in a hospital bed and soon spotted the woman of his dreams, Joan Williams, peeking into his window at him from outside. In a reflex reaction based on an anxious desire to talk with her, Jay ran outside to meet her at an incredible speed. He eventually realized that the radiation within the heavy water activated a latent metagene, increasing his metabolism and altering his body's nutrient intake so that he was now able to move at super speed. Influenced by his favorite comic superhero as a kid, a speedster known as Whip Whirlwind, Jay turned his father's World War I helmet into a stylized winged cap and decided to use his new abilities to fight crime and protect innocents in Keystone City as the Flash.
Oh, I always thought it was so dumb that the character got his powers by inhaling hard water vapors, but now that you say that there was a radioactive element to it that unlocked a metagene, that is a lot more acceptable to me.
Okay, so it was originally hard water vapors that gave him his power. And if you know what hard water is, it's just, water with a lot of minerals in it. Like, a lot of people drink that every day. But heavy water is something completely different from hard water. It's radioactive, and so they later retconned the hard water to be heavy water.
Gotcha.
It wasn't long before Joan, now Jay's girlfriend, realized that Jay was the Flash. Jay's college professor, Edward Claris, who oversaw the heavy water experiment, overheard Joan talking about the Flash and was able to deduce Jay's superhero identity. With that information, Professor Claris was able to reverse engineer a chemical formula that granted him a similar super speed for a limited time. Embittered by the scientific community's rejection of his theories, Professor Claris used the formula to turn to supervillainy, donning a darker version of Jay's Flash costume and dubbing himself Rival, the very first Reverse Flash. During their final battle, Rival was able to attain enough speed to run faster than light, vanishing into what was unknown to Jay at the time as the Speed Force. Early in Jay's superhero career, he teamed up with other superheroes to form the very first super team, the Justice Society of America, for which Jay was the team's initial chairman and leader. Together, they stopped supernatural threats and Nazi villains, though the team itself was unable to invade Europe and stop World War II due to the influence of the Spear of Destiny, under Nazi control at the time. After World War II, Jay semi-retired from superheroics, married Joan, and founded Garrick Laboratories, becoming a world-renowned scientist. Thanks to some of the magical adventures Jay had with the JSA, Jay and Joan aged slower than most humans. Jay eventually came out of retirement only to meet another, newer Flash named Barry Allen, who they realized was from an alternate dimension known as Earth 1. Jay and the rest of the JSA lived on Earth 2. Eventually, it was discovered that there were an infinite number of dimensions, which were all merged into one during the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, during which Barry Allen died, sacrificing himself to save existence. In the newly created reality, all members of the JSA came out of retirement, also seemingly sacrificing themselves to save existence by fighting an eternal battle within the realm of Limbo in order to prevent Ragnarok. Later rescued from their fate, Jay returned to Earth and to his wife Joan, and he retired again, though occasionally he helped Barry Allen's successor, Wally West, the new Flash. With the death of one of his old JSA allies, Wesley Dodds, the Sandman, Jay and other surviving members of the Justice Society decided to reform a new incarnation of the JSA in order to mentor new, young heroes with ties to some of the team's former members, such as Atom Smasher and Stargirl, the latter of whom you can learn more about in our Stargirl vs. Darkhawk episode. It was during this time that Jay was first able to tap into the Speed Force, the cosmic force discovered by Wally West that propels space-time forward and acts as the source of speed for speedsters. By tapping into the Speed Force, Jay was able to move faster than he ever had before. The reformation of the JSA also brought about some of their old foes, including the mystical Johnny Sorrow, who discovered Professor Edward Claris, aka the Rival, within the Speed Force. Johnny Sorrow was able to extract Rival from the Speed Force to join his Injustice Society supervillain team. Driven insane by his time within the Speed Force, Rival went on a murder spree across America. It was Jay who realized that the targeted individuals spelled out Professor Claris's name on a map, and that his final target would be Jay's wife, Joan. Luckily, Jay, with the aid of the Speed Force, was fast enough to drain Rival's speed before the villain was able to get to his wife. Joan and Jay were never able to have children, and they gladly took in Barry Allen's grandson, Bart Allen, aka Impulse and later Kid Flash, when he emerged in the present timeline from the future. Together, Jay, Bart, Wally, and several other speedsters joined forces during the Infinite Crisis storyline in an effort to trap the villainous Superboy Prime in the Speed Force in order to erase him from existence. Jay, due to his age, was unable to keep up and stayed behind while the others vanished into the Speed Force. Only Bart returned, with the entirety of the Speed Force within him. Unfortunately, Bart later died after a short career as the Flash, and Jay was once again able to tap into the Speed Force. When Barry Allen returned to life and tried to rewrite history, it resulted in an event known as Flashpoint that reset DC's continuity. With the multiverse returned, Jay Garrick once again existed on Earth 2, which was invaded by Apocalypse. The Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman of that Earth, including the entire Roman pantheon of gods, all died protecting Earth from Darkseid's forces. After Joan dumped Jay because his life wasn't moving forward, Jay drove to the outskirts of town to contemplate his future. It was at that moment that the Roman deity Mercury crash-landed nearby and imbued Jay with his power before dying. Jay fought alongside other reimagined JSA heroes such as Green Lantern and Hawkgirl before Earth 2 was eventually destroyed by Darkseid. Recently, in Prime continuity, Wally West helped ignite the Rebirth event that restored pre-Flashpoint continuity to the DC universe and led to the re-emergence of the original JSA characters, including Jay Garrick. Now, powers-wise, Jay's metagene allows him to run at speeds approaching the speed of sound. By tapping into the Speed Force, Jay is able to move, think, and react at speeds nearly up to the speed of light. He can both imbue or drain speed and kinetic energy from other people and objects, including his own body, which allows him to heal from injuries within seconds. He can also increase the speed of the molecules within his own body, vibrating them to allow him to become intangible and phase through matter. The Speed Force also helps decelerate his aging and helps keep his aged form spry, vigorous, and agile. And that's the Flash.
Jay Garrick is just so damn wholesome.
Hell yeah,
He
is.
He's like the grandpa of all superheroes.
He absolutely is. And I've kind of decided that I want to buy his helmet. I need to find where they sell it online because that is just a dope helmet.
I will not be saying the same about Electro's mask because that is just a stupid ass mask. But I do like the character, so let me go ahead and tell you all about his backstory. Now, Maxwell Dillon was born in Endicott, New York, to Jonathan and Anita Dillon. His father had a hard time holding steady employment, and the family would often move from town to town, making it hard for Max to ever make any friends. One day, Jonathan announced he was leaving the family for another woman, and Max and his mother were left to fend for themselves. His dad's abandonment and inability to keep a job and his desire to help his mom developed in Max a strong desire to be monetarily successful in life. As he grew into adulthood, Max told his mom he wanted to go to college and become an electrical engineer. But Max's mother lied to him and told him that his college application was rejected out of fear of her son moving away and leaving her alone. With his dreams dashed, she suggested that he get a job at the local electric company, which he did, finding work as a lineman working on power lines across the city. After a few years, he became the most skilled lineman at the company and grew arrogant and complacent in his position. When a fellow power line worker was knocked unconscious and stuck up on a high pole near dangerous loose wires, Max agreed only to save his coworker's life if he got a pay bonus. During the rescue, Max was struck by lightning while in contact with the live wires and a spool of cable. The incident nearly killed him, but the unique magnetic field and high-voltage electricity sources altered his nervous system and transformed him into a living electrical generator, capacitor, and transformer all in one. Max borrowed money and bought a rundown house where he installed an electrical lab for experimentation. He learned that the rhythmic muscle contractions that normally help regulate a person's body temperature were generating electrostatic power for him at a rate of about 10,000 volts per minute, and that his maximum storage capacity was 10 million volts. He discovered through a pair of Van de Graaff generators he installed that he could supercharge himself and discharge far more voltage when he was in contact with an external power source. Around this time, one of the men Max borrowed money from confronted him and threatened his life if he didn't repay him. Max fired a bolt of lightning from his hands at the man, killing him, and he discovered he could use his deadly powers to fulfill his greedy desires. He created the costume guise of Electro and went on a crime spree, robbing banks, armored trucks, and safes. He was eventually stopped by Spider-Man. Spider-Man lost their initial encounter, but then used his scientific knowledge to equip himself with rubber gloves and boots, and defeated Max by spraying him with a fire hose. Max was sent to prison, but soon escaped and was thwarted by Daredevil in his plan to rob the Baxter Building, the headquarters of the Fantastic Four. Max then sought revenge on Spidey and Daredevil by joining a pair of supervillain teams to defeat them. The first team he joined was the Sinister Six, alongside Mysterio, Dr. Octopus, the Vulture, Sandman, and Kraven the Hunter. They created a plan to attack Spider-Man individually one-on-one within a gauntlet, as the villains were all too prideful to have Spider-Man killed by anyone other than themselves. Max went first and attacked Spider-Man at a power plant, but the hero tied a line from a spool of grounding wire to his foot that prevented him from getting electrocuted. You can learn more about the Sinister Six in our Scarecrow vs. Mysterio duel episode. Defeated, Max then formed the Emissaries of Evil team, recruiting Stiltman, Gladiator, Leapfrog, and Matador to go after Daredevil. Learning from his previous team's mishap, Max and the other emissaries attacked together in unison, but Daredevil managed to get Max to inadvertently electrocute the rest of his teammates, and the emissaries were defeated. Beaten, but ever persistent, Max later joined a new version of the Frightful Four, consisting of the Wizard, Trapster, and Sandman, to go up against their enemies, the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. The villainous team was defeated, with Max wrapped up in rubber and then knocked unconscious. Discouraged by his string of failures, he retired from his life of crime and got a job at Coney Island for a while. Humiliated and hungry for respect, Max decided he was going to absorb all the power from Manhattan. For a while, his plan was successful. The entire island was blacked out, and Max had become so powerful that Spider-Man couldn't stop him. In fact, he became too powerful as he overloaded and couldn't control his energies. Spider-Man reasoned with Max that the only way he could save himself would be to discharge his electricity back into the city, which he did. With power restored and Max drained and defeated, he turned himself in to the authorities. After being released on probation and laying low for a while, Max was eventually hired to break the villain Sauron out of the maximum security supervillain prison known as the Raft. Initiating one of the greatest prison escapes ever, Max ambushed the facility and used his powers to free 87 superpowered inmates, making sure they knew he did it, garnering a favor from every single one of them.
Wow.
It was an act that resulted in the formation of the New Avengers team, consisting of new members such as Luke Cage, Spider-Man, and the Sentry. After losing in a fight against Thor, Max was interrupted in his revenge scheme by Dr. Octopus, who at the time had taken over the body of Peter Parker and had dubbed himself the Superior Spider-Man, which you can learn more about in our Blue Beetle vs. Spider-Man duel episode. Doc Ock used brain control devices on his former Sinister Six teammates to lead them as the Superior Six. Eventually, Doc Ock lost control and Max and the other villains went on a rampage. But due to having been, quote, working with, quote, Spider-Man, Max lost all credibility in the supervillain community. Despite this indignity, he found solace in a deranged woman named Francine Fry who was obsessed with Max and was his #1 fan. He accidentally fried her to a crisp though when she tried to get intimate with him, and in his despair, he infiltrated Peter Parker's tech company called Parker Industries, which was working on a device to depower Electro. It worked, and Max tried to live a normal life. However, the Spider-Man villain known as the Jackal cloned Francine Fry's remains and used her to get Max to repower himself and work with him. Max agreed, and he subjected himself to the Jackal's experiments to regain his electric powers. However, the process didn't take, and Max ended up dying, his powers transferred to Francine Fry through a kiss. She is currently the new Electro.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But she doesn't have a long history, and so this matchup is going to use the classic Electro character, Max Dillon, because I'm pretty sure at some point he is going to come back. Now, powers-wise, as stated earlier, Electro can generate, store, and discharge millions of volts of electricity. He can discharge it as free-flowing electrical energy, such as lightning bolts, or pass it through conductive materials. His skin is highly electric and will electrocute anyone who touches him. He can use his abilities to enhance his body's bioelectric systems to grant him heightened reflexes and strength, able to lift 500 pounds. Electro can also manipulate others' bioelectricity to paralyze or mentally torture them. He can levitate himself and glide along electrical currents, such as those above electrical power lines. And finally, Electro can absorb electrical energy to recharge and increase his own energies. And that's Electro.
He actually reminds me a lot of the character of Livewire, a Superman villain. And that probably would have been a good match too, but again, you're running into a lightning bolt versus a lightning bolt.
Yeah, it's hard with elemental characters.
Let's see if Electro could keep up with the Flash.
Yeah, now that we've gone over their backstories and powers, let's speculate on how one of the 1000 simulated matches will go. The winner is determined by our simulations, not the speculation, but it is fun to imagine how this could play out.
We don't set any rules for this match, other than the characters don't know anything about each other going in, except that the other character is a threat that needs to be put down. And we say that they start off about 50 meters apart in an environment that has no bearing on the match itself, because we don't take stats for the environment.
Plus, certain characters have advantages in some environments over others, and we want these characters to win on their own merits. So let's go ahead and get into it. The characters meet on the battlefield, 50 meters apart. Who goes first?
I feel like that's a silly question because it's a Flash character. Flash characters always go first. They're fast. So the Flash is going to start off straight up just by running up to Electro at full speed and punching him, just sending him flying backwards.
Well, except unluckily for Jay Garrick, he doesn't wear gloves like the other Flash members do. So he's punching him with his bare hand, and making that contact against Electro is going to give Barry Allen the biggest static shock of his life. He's going to get really zapped. So yeah, he makes contact and sends Electro flying backwards, but the Flash also goes flying backwards from the tremendous jolt he just received, touching Electro's body. So they both get blasted backward, and Electro gets up and he starts hurling these lightning bolts directly at the Flash.
Okay, but the speed of electricity is not the speed of light. So the Flash is able to outrun these lightning bolts. Just like, zigzag pattern, just dodging all of them.
Yeah, but this is like a lot of lightning that's being thrown at him here. He's not going to be able to dodge it all because the lightning is like branching out in like this unevadable pattern.
Okay, we'll say he gets zapped by one, but he recovers pretty quickly from it, because he has super fast healing. So then he runs at Electro again. This time though, instead of making physical contact with him, he's going to phase his fist into Electro's body, screwing up his internal organs and knocking him out.
I mean, but if he phases his fist into Electro's body, he's going to have to make himself tangible at some point in order to affect what's inside him. And the inside of Electro is also electrical. It's the muscle spasms that he has that generates the electricity. So the Flash may be hurting Electro, but he's also getting heavily electrocuted again. And this time, he's going into cardiac arrest like the old man that he is.
Yeah, but doesn't electricity also jumpstart the heart like with a defibrillator? I don't think he would go out with cardiac arrest here.
I have no idea. I don't know the science behind that.
Me neither. But it does seem like Jay can't get anywhere near Electro and hurt him physically in any way, which is a challenge. But I'm pretty sure that Jay can't be hurt by Electro's electricity as long as he's in the air. It's like why birds can land on electric power lines and not get hurt, because they're not grounded, right?
Yeah, there's no circuit for the electricity to pass through.
So what Jay's gonna do is, whenever he attacks Electro at super speed, he's gonna do so after leaping into the air. So he's just delivering a whole bunch of kicks to Electro's head with his rubber-soled shoes. A whole bunch of times, really fast.
Or he's gonna do a bunch of little short hops while he's fighting?
Yes. Exactly.
I thought the Flash's clothes were made out of Speed Force, not rubber.
Not Jay Garrick, actually. He just has a Speed Force aura that protects the costume he already has on.
And you're just assuming he's wearing rubber-soled shoes?
I mean, most boots have rubber soles.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, all right. So he's doing a lot of short hop kicks. And yeah, Spider-Man is used to attacking Electro through the air to avoid being grounded. But here's the thing. With enough voltage, Electro can ionize the air around them so that the air itself becomes conductive and can create a circuit for the electricity to pass through, no matter whether or not Jay is grounded.
The heck?
So by ionizing the air, he shoots a lightning bolt and blasts the Flash backwards away from him. And with so much ionized air, Electro hovers slightly from the ground, and he's rushing at the Flash, looking like some kind of plasma globe. You know those toy plasma globes where it's the electricity that branches out in that little glass ball?
Yeah, you put your hand on it and there's a lightning stream that arcs to all of your fingertips.
Right, exactly. That's what Electro looks like right now, rushing at the Flash.
Okay, but electricity is attracted to electrical conductors, like the Flash's metal cap.
Yeah.
So what he's gonna do is he's gonna take his cap off and toss it onto the ground away from him so that all of the zapping electricity is attracted to the cap and not to the Flash. Just like how the electricity in a plasma ball is attracted to the fingertips. And with all of this electricity diverted, that's gonna leave Electro wide open to get straight up clotheslined at full speed by the Flash.
All right, so Electro's probably knocked back down to the ground from his hover state, and he doesn't like how sciencey the Flash got there with his helmet. And he does have limited magnetokinesis over metallic objects, so he's going to kind of lift that magnetic helmet and just remove it from the battlefield so that the Flash can't do that again. So he just hurls it through the air away from the arena that they're fighting.
No, not only is that a dope-ass helmet, it also has some sentimental value for Jay. So he's not just going to let it leave the environment. He's fast enough to go and grab it.
Okay, but when the Flash is running away to go grab his helmet that Electro hurled away with his electricity, remember that Electro can actually ride along electrical currents, like above power lines. So what he's going to do is he's going to ride on top of the Flash's electrical wake trail that he leaves as he runs.
Huh.
So he's locked in on that, and no matter where Jay runs, Electro's going to be able to follow him.
You are lucky we do not account for environment in these matches. Because I would have had Jay run right through a brick wall, just phase right through it, and have Electro crash into it.
Yeah, but who's to say that there's any buildings around in this environment, So yeah, that's not going to happen.
Okay, but as Electro is sort of hurtling towards him, the Flash is just going to stop in his tracks, do a 180, takes his helmet off, and bangs on the back of it, causing this sonic shockwave that just plows into Electro.
Is that something that he can do? Did you just make that up? Can Jay Garrick create shockwaves with his helmet?
I did not make that up. That's actually a move that Jay Garrick did against Professor Zoom in the comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dumb. Okay, so Electro, traveling on this electrical current, just slams into the sonic shockwave and gets knocked down.
And as he's on the ground, the Flash runs around him in a circle at super speed, just sucking the air away from him like a vacuum to render him unconscious.
But Electro still has some tricks up his sleeve. Before he passes out from oxygen deprivation, he kind of reaches out and taps into the Flash's bioelectricity that controls his brain and his muscles, and he causes the Flash to seize up and fall to the ground, paralyzed.
What? He doesn't need to be touching him to do that?
No, he can do it from a slight distance. What are you gonna do now? I'll tell you, nothing. Electro's gonna walk right up to the paralyzed Flash, and he's going to put his hands on him, and he's going to start absorbing all of his bioelectricity, using the Flash himself as a power source to charge up his next attack, where he grabs the Flash's helmet while it's still on his head, and he charges it with the last of his remaining electricity, which just fries the Flash's brain to a crisp, kind of like an execution via electric chair.
Yeah, that headpiece is kind of an unfortunate costume element here in this match.
And that's the end of the match. Flash dies.
He's faster than electricity, though. And again, he could heal at super speed. So before the electricity reaches his brain, he recovers from his paralysis and just, punches through Electro's chest, just, punching his heart, right out of his body.
But we've already established that touching Electro will electrocute the Flash.
Well, Flash gets shocked in the process of doing this, but, he survives and Electro doesn't.
No. He was paralyzed. He doesn't do shit, because also that would take away my cool electrical chair finishing move.
No, it's the Flash. He moves in a flash.
But not fast enough to escape his execution. But yeah, we can leave it there. Either Jay Garrick's brain gets fried to a crisp, or he somehow manages to be fast enough to punch Electro's heart out before any of that happens.
I like it.
We'll leave the match there. We'll go ahead and run the simulations on these characters to find out who would actually win and by how much, and we'll come back to you with the results.
We'll be right back.
All right, so we've had one Flash go up against another speedster, a Flash go up against a kinetic energy type guy in Speedball, and now we've had one go up against an electrical energy foe. How do you think that experiment turned out?
The match was actually a little bit more interesting and balanced than I thought it was going to be. I was kind of disappointed when we weren't pitting Jay Garrick up against another speedster, but I actually think Electro was an apt opponent for Jay Garrick, specifically because Jay really couldn't touch Electro, and Jay has, the metal cap, which proved to be both an advantage and disadvantage in this match.
Right, yeah, it's not like Barry Allen has a metal hat that he can throw.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting how they were kind of able to play off of each other a little bit. In the end, I think the match was kind of a long shot that ended up paying off because it was fun. Stats-wise, the characters differed actually pretty greatly in different categories. Like, the Flash kicks the shit out of Electro in terms of movement speed and evasiveness. But Electro kicks the shit out of the Flash in terms of range and damage level. Like, Electro at full charge is able to, decimate entire structures. And the Flash just doesn't have that kind of explosive power.
Yeah, the stats in which each character was good in, they were really good in it, and the other character was really poor in it. That said, there were a few categories where they were pretty close to each other, like in terms of durability and strength and perception. We did say that the Flash was slightly more intelligent than Electro, considering he's an established scientist.
And while Electro could have been an established scientist, he never actually studied in the field, but did learn on his job as a lineman some pretty nifty electrical engineering techniques.
So when we break down the stats, who do you think is going to come out on top in this match?
I think it's going to be a coin toss, actually. I think it's going to be pretty dang close to 50-50, just given how these stats kind of go tit for tat when comparing them against each other. If the Flash does manage to win and Electro loses, I think it's going to be within 50 simulated battles.
Well, that differs pretty greatly from what our listeners think is going to happen. According to the polls we set up on Instagram and Facebook, 73% think that the Flash is going to prove victorious.
I mean, it makes sense. Flash is the good guy in this scenario. I think it's just a popularity contest.
Well, I have the results right here. The winner of this episode's match between the Flash, Jay Garrick, and Electro is the Flash.
Electro.
Nope, the Flash.
But whose voice was speaking right there?
Mine. The one who has the actual results in front of him. Now, the Flash won 537 matches out of the 1,000 simulations we put these two characters through.
So my guess was pretty close.
Yeah, and Electro won 463. Almost a coin toss. Not quite, but definitely close.
Was it closer than you thought it would be?
Honestly, I'm kind of surprised the Flash won.
Really?
Considering how difficult it is for him to touch Electro, I honestly thought Electro was going to take this. But according to the stats, Flash is just a superior character. And I'm sure, like Spider-Man, he'd find numerous ways to defeat Electro.
Yeah, especially if the environment is taken into consideration. Unfortunately for Electro, I feel like he stages a lot of his confrontations with Spider-Man at power plants, where he can surely absorb a lot of power, but there's also a lot of items on hand there to help prevent electrocution, Which is kind of dumb on his part. But in that regard, the Flash is fast enough to go grab something from wherever they're fighting that he can use to help him out.
Early on in the Flash's career, he used to carry this metal rod, almost like a lightning rod. It even had a lightning bolt on it that he used to throw into an environment to signal his arrival, or use it as a weapon to knock away guns and stuff like that.
Well, that's hilarious. Why doesn't he still have that? That's pretty cool, actually.
I thought it was pretty cool too. I think he should have that.
But that does it for this duel. Let us know, guys, what you thought about the results by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And you can find links to all of our accounts by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you can also find a link to our Patreon page where we offer bonus content, including blooper reels, special duel requests, and access to our new Discord chat server. You can check out all of these features at patreon.com/dynamicduel. Our lowest tier is only $2 a month.
And also on dynamicduel.com is a link to our merchandise store where we sell t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, and more with our Dynamic Duel No Prize artwork. Now, Jonathan, who are you drawing for this week's No Prize?
I think this episode I'm going to be drawing Electro, and I'll save Jay Garrick for the next episode.
And the next episode will be a review episode, since we have the animated film Batman Death in the Family coming out in a few weeks, which is a prequel to Batman Under the Red Hood. We figured that we would squeeze in a Batman Under the Red Hood review.
Batman Under the Red Hood is one of the best DC animated films that they've ever made, so I'm looking forward to reviewing that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys don't typically watch the DC animated movies, if you only watch one, I would highly suggest watching Batman Under the Red Hood, because it's just phenomenal. Like, fans love it, critics love it. It's just amazing. Can't wait to talk about it next week. We want to remind everyone again to please subscribe to our show if you haven't, or please leave a rating or a review on your platform of choice. Sharing the show on social media or in person is also a big help for us.
But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers Ken Johnson, Jace Crump, John Starosky, and John Speas for helping make this podcast possible. We'll talk to you guys next week. Up, and away!
True believers.